Do I have all the speakers? Maybe I just ask our speakers to join here. Edith Trudith, Eluthu, Charmaine, and Malebo is joining online. Let's see. Can I have the speakers on the stage, please? Happened that our session chairs are both joining virtually. Can we get the Zoom screen up, please? The Zoom screen? Yes. Okay, so on our screen, you would see Joseph. Joseph, wave your hand. There you go. And Faluke. Hi. And our speaker, Malebo. Okay, you actually can have a microphone on whenever you want to say something. And I had hoped that somebody might want to be what we call a pop-up chair. Anyone's interested to become a pop-up chair? You know, basically you can come on the stage, you can engage with the speakers and also helping the virtual chairs. Anyone interested? Your chance. Would you like to do that, Chakundi? Yes. Oh, please. Here we have our pop-up chair, Chakundi, who I know for some time when I was working in Malawi. Joseph and Feloke have been preparing some opening remarks, but it would be great if you can also help them because, you know, they don't see who's in the room, and you can also, I'm sure you know what to do. I don't need to say much. The discussant, sorry. Oh, thank you. See, she's a good chair. See, I'm not even doing my job well. The two discussants, I remember one, but Feluke is going to be the first discussant. And then Yinji would be our final discussant. Okay, I'll give you this. See, I'll sit there and I will give I'll do the time card. So everybody 15 minutes, and I will show you 5 and 1. Yes? Okay. Thank you. So, Joseph, Faluki, Chit Kondi, the panel is yours.
Okay. Can I?
Thank you very much. Welcome to this session, the last session on leaders in gender equity. And our speakers are already called to the stage. And without much ado, let me call upon Joseph to come in with his remarks, and then thereafter the next chair. Over to you, Joseph, and then pass it on to Faluke.
Hello, everyone. We actually had lined up how it was going to go. So I welcome you all to this plenary session on leaders in gender equity and the closing plenary. I will hand over to the co-chair, Joseph Luomba, who will introduce the speakers and the discussant. We look forward to a good and engaging session that will come up with practical solutions and innovation to gender equity. Gender equity is fairness and justice, but the process of being fair to women is the process of being fair to women and men. However, to ensure fairness, measures must be available to compensate women who historically and socially have been disadvantaged over time, and which has prevented them from operating on a level playing ground. We will leave our speakers to speak to us first, and I now hand over to Joseph Luomba to take over the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Faluke, my co-chair. I have the pleasure to introduce to you 4 brilliant speakers that we have in this our session. And the 4 speakers, the first one will be Elitudit Lukanga, who is the co-founder and executive director of Environmental Management and Economic Development Organization. This is an NGO in Tanzania. Then we also have another speaker by the name Eletu Duna, coming from South Africa, and is the national project coordinator for the project that is titled Enhancing Climate Change Resilience in Benguela Current Fishery System. Then we'll have our third speaker in this session will be Shaman Daniels, who is a fisherwoman in South Africa. And our last speaker in the session is Malebo Helen, who is currently the fisheries officers at the African Union Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, IBAR, AU IBAR, since 2020. And besides the 4 speakers that we have, we also have 2 discussants. And the first discussant will be my co-chair for Luke. Then the second discussant will be Linji Lee from Tokai University in Japan. So this is a very exciting session that the 4 brilliant speakers are going to share with us the experiences they have with their work that they do to promote the recognition of women in fisheries. And we are giving the speakers, they have only 15 minutes to make their presentations. Thereafter, we'll have the 2 discussants 5 minutes each to deliberate on what the presenters have made. So we'll be, just to remind the speakers that we'll be strict with time, just so please ensure that you use your 15 minutes well, so that we'll give time for more people towards the end for discussion. Thank you. So I may call upon now the first presenter, Editrudith Lukanga, to give her speaking note. Thank you. You are welcome.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, the co-chairs. I would like to also thank the organizers and the chair. Sorry? Okay, fine. Hello, is it okay? Yes, sir? Yeah, I think it's okay now. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so fast forward, protocol observed. I would like to thank the organizers, Ratana and your team, thank all the colleagues for this opportunity, for having me speak this evening, especially on this very special topic regarding leadership in gender equity. I think it is important, first of all, to inform you why should we care about this topic. Given the focus of the Congress on leadership in sustainable small-scale fisheries, we have had good presentations for the past 2-3 days. And why should we care? It is because, number one, gender and women empowerment are globally recognized in the Sustainable Development Goal number 5. And this regional congress is organized to celebrate also the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture, IAFA, that was declared by the UN to recognize the contribution of small-scale fisheries and aquaculture to livelihoods, food security, and nutrition. The IAFA the IAFA Global Action Plan, pillar number 5, promotes gender equality and equity. And it also acknowledges that women in small-scale fisheries, they should be, women and men in small-scale fisheries are equals. However, it underlines the importance of centralizing the role that women in small-scale fisheries play, which is very essential for women's empowerment and sustainable development. Number two, why should we care? Most importantly, as it has been said almost throughout this conference, women contribute more than 40% of the global fisheries workforce in the small-scale fisheries and aquaculture combined. And even though they provide this whole amount of labor in the sector, they face a lot of discrimination in terms of labor. In the nodes of production they participate in, and if you compare what they get to men, men are earning more than women, whether be it in the industry or they are working at home as processors. But also women have a huge burden of unpaid labor work, caring for the community, caring for children at the household level, all household activities that are taking place. And at the same time, at home, when there is an aquaculture pond, it is women who are involved in the feeding of the pond, of the fish in the pond, cleaning the pond, and all that is done without them being paid. Number three, the issue of invisibility of women in aquatic food systems. It is the fact that has been mentioned also throughout that we are in shortage of sex disaggregated data that tells us how women and men, in terms of the role they play in the sector, in terms of benefits. No, it's not. Yeah. So in terms of benefits that they get, okay. We are in shortage of data in terms of what men and women get in the whole process. However, the recent Illuminating Hidden Harvest project has somehow unmasked the invisibility of women in the small-scale fisheries, but much more work needs to be done still. And why is that? In order to really understand these data that we're having and what this data tell us to inform the policy change that we want to see on the ground. The next point is, why should we care? It's because of the need. We really need to understand what are the preferences, what are the needs, wants for each of the gender types, be it men, women, children, youth, indigenous men and women, all the gender types, including the people with disabilities. What are their preferences in terms of technology, for example? Innovations that practitioners are able to generate and provide opportunities to be knowledge co-creators with the academia and researchers. But also the issue of poverty. We know that women experience high degree of socioeconomic marginalization compared to men. And this was before COVID. But with the advent effect of COVID-19, the gap has even widened further. And we are still continuing to see this impact. This is really enlarging the gap between women and men in terms of income, poverty, between various groups in the community. So acknowledging the role that women play in the small-scale artisanal fisheries and aquaculture and the deep-rooted challenges they face is essential to constructing gender-based approaches to management, allowing incentivizing women to engage in responsibilities all along the value chains. Through progressive implementation and use of relevant international instruments and guidance, policies should aim to secure women's access to, use of, and tenure over land and other resources. Last but not least, I would like to share with you an example that we can take away with us as we move out of this room regarding this interesting study that women in African continent, the women fish processors and traders in the sub-Saharan Africa, were able to do in collaboration with other organizations and research institutions to analyze the impact of COVID-19 to the women. Through that study, the whole process, the women were at the center. They were at the driver's seat, and it enabled identification of the extent to which COVID-19 impacted on the women. The impacts were enormous, ranging from lack of inconsistent supply of fish, which disrupted the market access for women. Some women went to mental breakdown. Some had lack of food in their families, and if they had, the quality was very poor. Some women had their children out of schools in some of the countries where schools were still open. So generally, the life was so much disturbed, and all the socioeconomic needs for the families were low. So what I would like us to take away as the message is that this study was able to generate a total of 10 policy recommendations. Those who participated in this morning's session, led by Aufishnet, were able to hear those. But what I want to share here are the 3 major points as a takeaway that summarize all the 10 recommendations. So the message number 1 is about securing women's assets and financing to enable recovery. We had the conversations around this week regarding access to finance. So women are now organized. It is important that they are supported with finances to be able to implement their plans and projects that they're implementing in order to transform the situation. Number 2, transformation of the decision-making processes to ensure equal voice for women in the governance of fisheries, food systems, and COVID recovery. And number 3, invest in women fish processors and traders, technical, human, digital, and collective capacities so that we don't leave anyone behind. And when we speak of leadership in gender, it has to be inclusive by bringing on board all those who have been left behind, by ensuring that we are all on the same journey together, and together we can. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Aditrudet, for keeping time. We now call upon the second speaker, Eletu Duna, to take the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying through what we normally call the graveyard session. My name is Eletu Duna. I work for the Benguela Current Convention. Today, I'm going to share with you guys some observations, some lessons on the erasure of women's role in small-scale fisheries of the Benguela Current large marine ecosystem. This does not work. I work on a project that aims to enhance resilience to the impacts of climate change. Last year, well into 4 years, into a 5 years project, I was busy conducting my project activities in a community called Honda Clip Bay. I was confronted by the women on the screen. They call themselves the women, the Honda Clip Bay Women's Forum. They came to me and they said to me, "You, Eletu, being a woman, what do you think about coming to a fishing community, conducting your project activities in a room that is always full of men?" And I couldn't answer. So, I had to then think about, what am I going to do? How am I going to try and sort of, get women involved in the project? And, I looked at our guiding document and I realized that women are always an afterthought, even to us women as well. And I also realized that we cannot meaningfully talk about, adapting to climate change, building resilience, reducing vulnerability when women are missing, So in terms of what women, their contribution to small-scale fisheries, as Eddie Truthith mentioned earlier, there's an estimated 45 million women globally that are said to be involved in small-scale fisheries. And that accounts for about 40% of the workforce. Some stats say up to even 50%. Primarily, their activities are in pre and post-harvest. Also, women have contribution in terms of their social reproductive roles, where they provide social economic services that are often part of the household and part of the greater community. But these, as a result of all of this, their contribution is often unrecognized, it's uncommodified, it's unpaid, because it's expected to be part of the house, to be part of domestic activities, childcare, caring for elderly. And this then means that women do not have a voice in small-scale fisheries. As I was doing my work and trying to figure out what is it that I'm going to do, I came across Auntie Sarah. It's easy to talk about stats, 45 million, 45 million women, but they're nameless and faceless. But coming across people's stories really sort of made it personal. Auntie Sarah is from Honda Bay. Honda Bay is a very small community. It's about 1,000 people. It's very secluded. It is a community that is dependent on fisheries. Back in the early 90s, I think in around 1992, Auntie Sarah used to work on the processing side of fishing activities that were being conducted by a company. So a lot of women were working there. So they decided to embark on a strike because of the treatment that the men on the harvesting side were experiencing, the ill treatment that the men were experiencing. The company fired all the women, shut down, and moved. And Auntie Sarah hasn't been able to have a job because there's nothing going on in that community. Fast forward 20, 30 years down the line, with the implementation of the small-scale fisheries policy, the very same men that they fought for are now keeping them out of the process in terms of them being part of the cooperative. I also met Auntie Nadima. Auntie Nadima is from Hout Bay. She's been selling fish in Hout Bay for 36 years, longer than I've been alive. But yet I'm standing here and I'm talking about how she has never been granted any sort of rights whatsoever. Also, one of the issues that they have, Anthony Dima and them, they buy fish, not necessarily through from the harvesters, but from langanas. This really then sort of, because the langanas will buy from the harvesters, and maybe let's say they buy fish at 30 rands, a fish, and then they'll sell it for double or triple that amount. And we're talking about poor women who, if they want to have access, then they have to pay that double, triple amount in order for them to sort of put livelihood into the table. And again, if we talk about access, I'm sure some of us know in some African countries, women have had to sell themselves, their bodies, in order to be able to gain, as leverage, in order to be able to access fish so that they can provide livelihoods for their families. Now, what is it that we need to do to address this? I'm really not bringing anything new to the table. We know very well women need to be granted access to fishing rights. Because without this, they don't have a voice, and without a voice, they cannot influence decision making. A few weeks ago, when we were doing an alternative livelihood activity with the women of Honteklebai, we were conducting a training where we were teaching them how to make jewelry using kelp. We went to the ocean, and then we got some kelp, and we came back to our training room. Two of the men in the cooperative came to us. They were very drunk, brazenly said to us, "What? You have no right to go to the ocean and take kelp without coming to us first. What right do you have, right? We own everything in the sea from this point to this point." And I like looking back at that incident, I'm realizing that having those rights empowered them. It gave them entitlement for them to come to us and say that to us. Why is it that there were no women who did that? From Monteklepa, there's no woman who's empowered and who can, be brazen like that and say, "I own, all of this from this point to this point." A study so really, it's, fishing rights is really, really, really important for women. On this slide, there's a picture of a study that was done in Malawi. It basically shows sort of what happens in the household when women are fully participating in small-scale fisheries. Women, because of their social productive rights, they are able to ensure security in terms of food security within the communities and for their families. But also, if you look at like a lot of small-scale fishing communities in South Africa, they are fraught with social ills. We're talking about alcohol abuse. We're talking about drug abuse, right? And what happens, like I mentioned before, those two men came to us. So usually you find that for the men, the income that they make, it doesn't make it to the household in its entirety. And that is not the case for the women, right? They are able to educate their children and keep them away from drugs. So if you give women fishing rights, you sort of build a nation. Other sort of intervention includes, we need to fully understand value chains. And in sort of our understanding of that, we need to understand who is what and what are they doing, what is the role of women, sort of as Chico and as Eddie Truth mentioned, we need disaggregated data by gender. As Maya Angelou once said, when you know better, you do better. We don't know better because we don't have the information. Another thing sort of that we need to be mindful of, that as we sort of try to strive to better manage small-scale fisheries and also improve technologies, we need to be mindful not to exclude women in that process. I'm making this statement thinking about one of the other communities that we work with in Humansdorp. we've sort of helped them, it's a group of men, they have a basket list of species, and we've helped them with business development. So once sort of their fishing activities sort of commence and they happen, really they almost will look like a commercial fishery. So you ask yourself, in that process, where are the women? What role are they going to potentially play? So we need to be very mindful of that. We also need to empower some women, so that they can view themselves as fishers. I've been trying to be mindful to not to sort of say a harvester when I talk about somebody who goes out to sort of fish, but we need to expand our idea of what a fisher is, so that we can be able to give voices to the women and empower them. And I think, in South Africa, there was a lady at the first day from the Legal Resource Council who was talking about, the process of fishing rights becoming human rights. Women must not be left out of that discourse. They have to be part of that. Now, good examples that are coming out of the region. We in South Africa and Namibia, we've launched our fishnet, the South African and Namibian chapters of our fishnet. Angola is yet to launch its chapter. I think looking at the South African one, still there's more that still needs to be done, because women need to be strengthened. The department is busy redoing the Western Cape province in terms of granting fishing rights. And with organization, we need to ensure that more women are part of those cooperatives. In Angola, there was a cooperative that was started by women who own fishing boats. But apart from owning fishing boats, they also looked at, what alternative livelihoods could they make for themselves. And they started collecting fish bowls and processing it and eventually turning it into a flour as fish meal, which they've been able to create a market for themselves all over Angola. And really the work that they have been doing has even been recognized by the president. This fishing cooperative started, I think, about 3 years ago. So women are not sort of sitting around and doing nothing. They are working to empower themselves. In Namibia, they recently sort of developed the National Plan of Action for Small-Scale Fisheries through the implementation of the Voluntary Guidelines for Securing Sustainable Small-Scale Fishery. The process was really a gender transformative approach. They did mapping surveys of women all across the small-scale fishing communities within the 14 regions of Namibia. And the goal really was to empower women by strengthening post-harvest activities, trade, and building their capacity and upskilling them. So if Namibia continues in this trajectory, I think the women of Namibia will really be empowered. In South Africa, we've got a cooperative called Veskes Monkey, which is a group of women who've sort of organized themselves to sort of form a cooperative. They mostly sort of collect resources in the intertidal zone, and they pickle them, etc. And they also sort of make other products that are not marine related. And then they sell them through Abalobi. I think there was an Abalobi presentation that was done yesterday. So again, women are not sitting down, they are working, but we need to catch up to them. We need to protect them. Because even though Auntie Tani Hilda and them are able to collect these resources, they don't have rights. So they're not able to sort of build bigger businesses. So we really need to work hard to ensure that women are protected. Thank you, everybody. Obrigada.
Then Joseph, are you there? Okay, so
Yes,
I
I'm
call
here.
upon the, okay,
Yeah.
so yeah.
You can
Take
continue. You can just continue since you are there. You can call upon Shaman Daniels to give her talk.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity. The nerves a little bit, but just bear with me. I'm Charmaine Daniels. I was born in Simonstown, Glencairn. With the Group Areas Act, they moved us to Ocean View, where I currently stay for the 54 years. I've been in the industry for 34 years, and believe it me, it's not an easy thing. Um, sorry. I started working as a recreational fisher, and where we couldn't transport or sell our catches, it was for own consumption. And in 1999, the government issued subsistence permits, whereas we could sell our transport and sell our catches. And that is where everything started. We, as a group of fishers, um, um, I was donated a boat from Premier Fishing, where I started the whole thing. It was a rowing boat. I worked myself up to a boat with a motorized motor, and me and my crew, we decided that we want a bigger boat to go further. And then in 2003, we had a big summit in Johannesburg, and that was when everything started. We went there, and that was when I got familiar with policies and regulations, and 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 all of our fishers was like excited because now we're on a platform where we were recognized. Um, one of the things was that I did a research. I did a research from there was a lot of drownings in our area. So I did a research, why is there so a lot of drownings? And I came to a conclusion that was a lot of fishermen. They go out and they can't swim. So I went to Tita and say, because on the picture you can see the old fishermen, how they had to jump in the water for survival. And where the women was left out, we had to look out for the fishermen. So then we went through theater and we made different courses, and that is how we help the fishermen. But at the end of the day, we as fisher women were always left out in the industry. There's also one thing I want to clear out here. Okay, fine. One of the she mentioned that the Lankanas come and the Lankanas take the fish from the boats, from the boat to the truck, from the truck to go sell on the road. But now the end of the day, our fishermen we catch for 35 rand a snook. And Lankana buy and Lankana sell for triple the amount. But the end of the day is we are on the short end of the whole story. The, what I want to point out here, we as women can also do the same thing like a fisherman. We can also go out there and we can also do what they do. A lot of women is left out because the fishermen think this is a male dominant industry. But I just want to prove that we can also do the same job that they do. We can also go out there and we can also catch the fish. Because the end of the day is that we as women are sitting at the back seat We just have to wait and wait and wait. As you say, is we are nothing if we haven't got a quota. At the moment, I haven't got a quota. I'm not in the small scale. I started with recreational. I went to subsistence. I had a 10-year rights in lionfish. We had to reapply. I was unsuccessful because I couldn't catch up with the 11-man boats. I've got a 4-man boat. So now I'm sitting, going back to the post office, buying again a recreational permit where I can't sell or transport. It's from recreational back to recreational. So the end of the day, it's not that I want to point out here that it's all about me. It is because the 1% of the industry in the lionfish is women. 99% is men. And the end of the day is that I'm lucky to have a boat because now I can go on my own boat. But if a woman goes with a tackle and go to the harbor and ask a site, she won't get the site. Because the end of the day is that they will rather take a man than a woman. But I'm so lucky because I can get on my own boat, catching my 10 snook. But it's not viable catch 10 snook, whereas you give out 2,000 rand for petrol, you go sell it and you go get 1,000 rand. Now what they do is they actually make me a poacher now because I'm catching more than 10 snook. I catch now 12, but I can just catch 10. So what they say is go back to poaching. Whether you poach big, whether you poaching is poaching. So the end of the day is that I just want to point out there that what they do to us as women is not fair, because the end of the day is that we want to contribute to our household, but how can we contribute if they just keep us there? The other one is there was a lot of courses done. I did my courses. I don't did business courses. I did that. The women do that. They do this. But the end of the day is now use the courses. Teacher give it. You accept it. You take it, and then what is the use of it doing it sitting with no rights? Um, I just want to come to a conclusion. Woman, a woman of the sea. We got all the experience in the factories. The women do all the cleaning. We come on shore. We clean the fish. We sell the fish, but the women is always sitting at the back seat. There's no recognition of the women in the fishing industry. And now what I want to say is, I think on the first day, Sue Middleton was here, right? This is the last day, and I don't see the officials, the policy makers. We never in charge or never part of policy, but we must just take it. We just enforce policy. We just enforce regulations on the fishermen. But we haven't got say in what. The end of the day is we are part, we are hands-on, we are doing the job, but we haven't got say in anything. In the policy making, I mean, we are the people that knows. We go to sea, we travel the storms, but we haven't got. We must just take it as it is. So what I ask from the people on the floor, let we as women get a voice so that we can be part of the policy making, that we can sit amongst, here's a lot of professors, here's a lot of people, researchers, but we are the people on the floor, the foundation where it starts. The end of the day, it starts from the fishermen right up. The factory take the stuff, they sell the stuff, but they can't go without us if we don't catch the fish. But the end of the day is, here we're sitting now, waiting for Father Christmas to give us a right so that we can live our life. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, welcome. Okay. Thank you very much, Shaman, for that wonderful presentation. I now call upon my label Helen, who is joining us virtually, to be our last speaker before we go to the discussion. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joseph. Good evening to everybody, all protocols observed. Thank you also to the organizers for extending the invitation to AU IBA to really come and give a presentation on the foundations that had led us to start our involvement and the promotion of our fishnet. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Can you put your presentation on presentation mode, please?
Sorry. Okay, thank you. I would also like to extend my greetings to the Honorable Minister, as well as the members of our fishnet that are present in the meeting, as my presentation will be more about their work and what we have been able to do from AU IBA. So my name's Malebo Helen Muepi Gebama, and I'm the Fisheries Officer at AU IBA. So this is the outline of my presentation. However, due to time, I will not talk about them. I would like to stress the challenges that my fellow panelist members have also emphasized. According to the World Bank, women in Africa, they represent about 50.1% of the population. And that is massive in terms of numbers as well as manpowers. And according to the FAO, the Sophia report of 2018, approximately 13 million people are employed in the sector. And of those, 6 million are processors. We had also that it represents about 40% of the global workforce in the post-harvest activities. And given the typical women that are involved in the small-scale fisheries, majority of them are small, medium enterprises. And as a result, given their conditions, at most or oftentimes, they do not have the power to influence the market prices. Most of them do not comply with the required certification and standards that are there for them to be able to trade in a formal market, particularly in the national, regional, and international markets. They lack also the technology to diversify their products, and they are unable also to meet the labeling, the branding, and the patenting requirements required for them to expand their businesses and reach more markets. And this is a big issue because with these conditions, it enables them to get the required investment and capitals for them to expand their businesses. And for those that are able to trade formally, they've got access to capital. You find that when they are about to, apply for big loans, they need collateral, and in most cases, their properties or investments are in the names of their husband, family members, and this also prevents them to access that, capital. And they also have some challenges in terms of the insecurities, particularly those in cross borders. They face harassments in the roads, also in the borders, as well as in the markets. Edith talked about the issue of data, and lastly, the issues of governance. We find that there's poor gender mainstreaming in the policies, of which my fellow panelists have talked about. And you find that the women, they do not also occupy like leadership positions in the administrations, and they are also not involved in the programs that are developed to address their needs. They've also talked about the issues of limited information on the training and educational opportunities, lack of their participation in decision-making, policy decision-making, as well as fisheries management. One also talked about the competition that women face in the sector, and I think it's an issue, and we need to continue to build their capacities so that they can be professional and also participate equally. Then what have we been doing at the AU level? Well, the discussion started way back, but I'd like to start from the 2014, in which we held a conference of African ministers in fisheries and aquacultures, and the issues in the sectors were discussed. The issues of women were discussed, the decisions were made, and the recommendations were made. I'd like to stress 3 recommendations that the ministers requested us to do. You will see that they've requested the AU, the REX, SADC is there, as well as the member states. We're requested to promote the empowerment schemes that will enhance the roles of women and youth, including trade, marketing, and production. We're also requested to harness the opportunities for the small medium enterprises development by expanding their markets. And lastly, to strengthen their capacities along the fish value chain. Then those recommendations that we received from the Council of the Conference of African Ministers were thus presented at the AU Summit in June 2014 during the Malabo Summit, and there was some declarations that were made. One of them, our heads of state and government, they have committed to support and facilitate the participation of women and youth in gainful and attractive agribusiness opportunities. And later on in 2015, we came about the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, in which it aspires for African women to be fully empowered in all spheres with equal social, political, and economic rights. And the issues of human rights, particularly of women, and the rights of children are prioritized. And it was in the same AU Summit in which the first continental policy framework and reform strategy for fisheries and aquaculture in Africa was endorsed by our heads of state and government. And this policy document was actually conceived to address the issues that the women are facing in the sector in Africa. So this policy document, its purpose is to transform the Africa's fisheries and aquaculture for food, livelihoods, and wealth. And it recognized and prioritized gender and youth as one of the cross-cutting policy arena. And it also promotes the inclusion of knowledge-based agenda and youth considerations to be taken on board in policies, laws, and plans, as well as promote safe working conditions and effective and equitable participation of women and youth. And we also have 7 key policy arenas. I just want to emphasize that the policy stresses the importance of small-scale fisheries, and we want to improve and strengthen their contribution for poverty, food, and nutritional security. So these are the policies that that are guiding our involvement when it comes to the support we are giving to the women. So where did it all started? In 2016, CAUPA organized a meeting, so we were partners in that meeting in Mauritania. They were commemorating the International Women's Day, and the workshop was basically focusing on the women's rights and fisheries reforms in Africa. Then that was followed by a training workshop that took place in Uganda, the training on fish handling hygiene, SPS measures along the post-harvest value chain, And that was for the Anglophones. Then we had a similar training for French-speaking countries in Senegal. And the recommendations that we have received from these 3 workshops was that there's a need to establish a continental network of women fish processors and traders. The women felt that, they've got their national chapters and so forth, but they need to communicate, collaborate with other women on the continent. And that is where AU-IPA now took the opportunity through our EU-funded fish trade project, which was basically implemented by AU-IPA, WellFish, and Outer NEPAD, supported by the EU from 2013 to 2018. And it was in this platform in which we have been able to facilitate the establishment of African women fish processors and traders on the continent. In this meeting, we had about 20 women from 28 AU member states. And really these women, they formed the nucleus for the network to operate, to start to operate and to extend its wings to other countries on the continent. And we had sessions on our fishnet. We've heard about what they are doing, but basically they are aimed at improving the welfare, the working conditions, and the income of women in the sector. And it also provides a forum through which they could share experiences, build their capacities, improve access of women's fish products to the market, and also advocate for one voice, African one voice, when it comes to their issues on the continent and also when it comes to their issues in the global fora. Then one of the biggest achievements that I think we did, emanating from the activities that we've been doing with the Outfishnet or the women on the continent, was that AU-IPA was able, through what we call the Specialized Technical Committee, which is basically the Council of Ministers in Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment. Those comprises of fisheries and aquaculture. We were able to ensure that our fishnet is endorsed by this Council of Ministers. So they've endorsed it in 2019, and they've also asked the African Union Commission for us to mobilize resources for their operationalizations. And that is why AU-IPA continue to support the Outfishnet on the continent. Also, Outfishnet is selected members of Outfishnet are also members of what we call the African Fisheries Reform Mechanisms working groups, and we are able to generate evidence and gather the issues that the women are facing at their operations. And we are able, through various steps, we are able to present those issues, even up to the AU summit. They make the decisions, we take back the decisions, then we implement them at the member states. And this resolution really has gained or has provided us with a political will that was lacking before. And the ministers, even when we were doing some activity, or when we are doing some activities of Outfishnet in selected countries, we really get the presence of the ministers in our meetings, because they have this, passion now to work with women. And their endorsement also provided them with the credibility to work with other partners and other international government organizations, because there's assurance that this is going to work, it is working, it has the political will, and it is sustainable. And I remember when Outfishnet was
Helen, you should be
registering.
winding up.
Okay. When Outfishnet was registering they are registering the platform in Tanzania. This resolution also helped them to remove the legislative barriers that existed. So I just want to touch base on the AU IBA's interventions, 2018, 2019. We've supported the meetings of the Bureau members. 2020, we've trained some members of our fishnet in aquaculture value chain. 2021, 2022, we've been able to support establishment of 15 national chapters in those countries I mentioned below. We've also been able to, we are working hand in hand with our fishnet in terms of communication and visibility. We've provided them with the online community of practice that is hosted by AU IBA, but it's an independent platform in which they are able to engage, share their experiences and collaborate. We've also heard from the Outfish Net members that they've got about 40 to 44 countries affiliated to them. That is a big achievement. I'd like to congratulate them. Then in terms of what we'll be doing is that we'll continue to develop the advocacy strategy and mechanism for ensuring their effective participation. We'll build capacities and create awareness in policy dialogue, governance, leadership, advocacy, networking, communication, organizational skills, and also develop cost-effective mechanism for stakeholders consultation. So in terms of the recommendation, I think it is important that we continue to empower and leverage women and youth to participate economically in the fish value chain by supporting them to strengthen and enhance their compliance and enhance the compliance of their enterprises to sectoral best practices, sector and business standard. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, so thank you very much for that presentation. I was hoping that Joseph would pop in, but now we move on straight to invite our discussants for the session, starting with Foluke. What are your insights based on the presentations that we've heard from the 4 speakers so far? Over to you, Foluke.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the presenters, Edurut, Elud, Charmaine, and Helene. Edurut brought out so many things about why should we care, the role and duties of women, the contributions, lack of disaggregated data, income disparity, deep-rooted challenges that women face. And Elud brought out the fact that women are always seen as an afterthought. And she spoke about different people. Auntie Sarah's story was particularly pathetic, but what came out from our discussion was access to fishing rights, that we need to do something about women having access to fishing rights. Because if you have access to fishing rights, you will have a voice and you will have the ability to influence decisions. And she actually made a statement that women build nations. She spoke about the security, the social ills in small-scale fisheries, and how women put their total income back into the family to educate their children and keep them away from drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and all that. And I was really touched by Jermaine's presentation because she passionately let us know that there is this feeling that men own the small-scale fisheries industry. It is male-dominated, and they push women to the background, whereas women are struggling. They're struggling to be there, and that there's a need to have a bottom-up approach to policy formulation so that women will have a voice. Women who go to sea will be able to say, this is what we face. Not that their products will be taken from them and sold, and then they are left like that to start waiting for Christmas, like she described it. And then Helene took us through all that AUIBA and the government have said, especially the establishment of OfficeNet, which has been a group of women processors. I belong to them too, and I know that they have been empowered, and especially the new innovation on communication and visibility is giving women processors a place to have a voice. But then the things that came out from the presentations, which I will want to dwell upon, are the innovations that we need to take away. There's the need for capacity development of women, the need to educate them to see the subtleness by which they are being relegated to the background in things being done for them in the small scale industry. When we look at input supply and when we look at when government give incentives in that sector, I'm guilty as well, like every other woman who has, I'm guilty. I know I've been guilty because when we were doing the growth enhancement scheme in Nigeria, we did have programs for women, but when we were giving out boats, our focus was on men, and I was part of it. And I'm making, I know that because Chairman was saying, how do women care for women? We need to care more for ourselves. We need to make sure, because women are already disadvantaged socially and otherwise, because historically they have been disadvantaged. So if nothing is done to upscale women, they will always be disadvantaged. Because if you distribute inputs, for instance, equally, the men are already up there. How do the women catch up with them? So Eduro spoke about gender transformative equity. And that is important. We must put in place programs that will ensure that women that are already disadvantaged are given better opportunity, more opportunity, so that they can scale up and meet up with the men, because the men are already up there. Then empowerment of the women came up strongly, that the women must be made to view themselves as women fishers. They must be able to know that, yes, we are also in this space and we need opportunities to be given to us. The issue of disaggregated data keeps coming up, because if you don't know what women are contributing and the areas of their contribution, even to production alone, governments may not be able to put into place policies that will enhance them, policies that will promote them, policies that will make them to be visible, and they need to be visible. So there's a need to illuminate the root causes of gender inequality and gender injustice. If we don't illuminate the root causes that brought women to the place where they are today, it may be difficult to actually work and have innovations that will help them to scale up. Also, most of the presenters spoke on product development, and particularly in South Africa, where we have had the product development and enriching the women economically. And so if we can have innovations and programs that will help women to develop products that we increase their economic income, it will be very useful. Also is the issue of
Can you wind up,
equity
please?
skills. Women must be taught equity skills for them to realize where they are being cheated and for them to speak up. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Luke. Can I call upon Lindiken as the second discussant?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Inji Lee. I'm from Tokai University, Japan. I'm coordinating the TVTI Japan Research Network. For this past few days, I'm really enjoying the Congress, and I'm so glad to be here to say a few words at one of my favorite plenaries. Thank you so much, Ratana and Maniba, for this opportunity. I'd like to introduce one of our initiatives as an example for the solutions towards addressing gender issues. Gender equity has been the most important visions and missions of our TBTI Japan since its launch. And well, as many of you know, Japan is not that famous when it comes to gender. So, which can be described by the three numbers, 10, 1, and 40. And as 10, there are only 10% of the fishers are female. And as 1, we only have one fisheries called president in the whole country among about 2,000 presidents, I mean, including the branch offices. And as 40, there are about 40% of the female workers who are contributing to the fishing and processing sectors. However, they're not necessarily well recognized. So with such circumstances, we, TBTI Japan, started the social educational program, which is called Girls Who Fish Japan, for attracting girls and women into fisheries and fishing communities. And this program was inspired by a Canadian Girls Who Fish, which is run by my friend in Kimberly Oren in Newfoundland, where I spent my 1 year sabbatical with Ratana. So in this program, we gather once a month in a fishing community, and we have girls and women this learning about fishing communities, fishing heritage, and interacting with the fishers, the co-op people, and also getting on a boat out for fishing and eating and cooking fish, creating fish recipes, etc. Okay, now currently it's just a small group. We have about 25 members in the program, aged from 8 to 83, and including my daughter. And it's a small group, and we still haven't had a major outcome or the result yet, but it's we feel it's getting more and more the social attention, and so we're confident that the small changes that we're making today will make a big difference tomorrow. And we do hope our activity will inspire many people in many parts of the world. So thanks Solutions, thanks Small Scale, thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Njike and Foluke, for those inputs and insights to the conversation that we are having in this last session. I now open the floor, and I'm going to be helped with those comments that are coming online. I open the floor for comments, contributions, if there are any, from those participating in person, and then I'll move to those that are online. Comments, questions? Okay, do we have any questions, comments online? Or those that are managing online? Yes, Matema, move on to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank our panel who were able to share everything that we needed to hear. And it feels so good to know that we do have the support system around us. Our duties is to go out there and talk to our women who we are, some of us we are leading. And I feel it's time that the women take an opportunity to be more vocal of what they need. Because as women, yes, we know what we need, but we have to be vocal and stand up for ourselves, knowing that we have other women behind us to support us, to give us directions. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for that input. Trying to encourage women to be more vocal in whatever we are trying to do. Any other contributions? Yes.
Thank you, moderator, for giving me the floor. I wish to thank all the presenters today. They have said it all. I would really wish to thank all the stakeholders for supporting the women, for giving us the opportunity to shine. But there are things that are beyond our control, like culture barriers. Like, for example, in my country, there are some landing sites where women are not allowed to fish or are even not allowed to go. So I wonder how we can address such barriers. And secondly, on the issue of finance, gender, it should be inclusive. When we receive support, like nationally, we receive support from different banks, from different partners, but the criteria for receiving that money is always that you have to write a proposal, and that proposal must be very articulate with a certain language. And some of the women that we work with are illiterate. They didn't even go to school. So I wonder how competitive that woman with no education and having to go through all this procedure of writing proposals and then being articulate and convincing you in your office in Washington to be able to fund her proposal. I think we need to think local. We need to scale down a bit in order to accommodate everyone. We need to think about if it is gender, let it be gender. Are the people with the disabilities included? Are the youth included? So for the betterment of our continent and for the betterment of the industry. With this, I wish to submit, because if I can take like an hour to just express myself, but otherwise I wish to thank you for inviting us, the women of our fishnet, and loving us, and we really appreciate. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for that input, and I hope the speakers have taken note of the questions that came in earlier on. And then for Luke, you're managing those inputs online. Can you come in?
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. I would like Jemima Kasal from Ghana to please ask her question.
Yes, so thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to say that all our presenters have been wonderful. Your presentations have really given a lot of insight. So my question is for Charmaine, our female fisherman. I wanted to find out if women are allowed in her area of South Africa to fish as a norm, because for some of our countries, for example, in Ghana, women cannot fish at sea, although our women can fish in the lagoons and estuaries and then in the rivers using passive gear, but they are not allowed at sea at all. So I just wanted to find out how it is like over there.
Yeah, we can open the floor to the speakers to comment.
Yes.
on the first set of questions and comments that came in.
Yes, we are allowed to fish because our constitution state that we can work, we want to work. It is our choice where we want to work. You can apply for a line fish or a quota as a woman, but from experience, they evaluate you on the same level as a male. So obviously, the male will get first privilege than a female. And that is what happened to me. I applied for a traditional lionfish. I was unsuccessful because I didn't meet the criteria because I caught less fish than a male. So that's why I fell out. But you can go to sea. There's no rule that the female can't go to sea in South Africa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Charmaine.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that, so with us, it's not written in law, it's just a cultural norm. So I think that we are all trying to find out ways by which we can work towards greater equity. So I think it's very interesting that this has been written into law that everyone is allowed to. So I think the rest of us have a long way to go, but we'll get there. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Jemima, for your contribution. That is part of the issues with equity, human rights. And to balance it, even that's why the issue of equity, the issue of fairness and injustice is people dependent and opinion dependent. And so thank you very much for your contribution. We had another person online who was asking that the policies, she was suggesting, Felicia from Eboka from Nigeria, that policies must be implemented. It's not a question, but that policies must be implemented at the top. That is, policies made for women should not just sit at the policy level, but that there must be implementation strategies to ensure that this is done. And one of the people asked questions from the participants spoke about satisfying conditions to access finance. I think that's a big problem all over. And I remember very well that there was a time we had to engage with a particular bank in Nigeria to allow women to use their jewelry as collateral for loan, because it's usually property, house, something that the bank can take hold of if you defaulted. So, but with that arrangement with the women group that time, they were able to deposit their jewelry. The bank did valuation of the jewelry and gave them credit facility, because that was one of the things that most of the speakers spoke about in their discussions, that women should be able to access finance for their enterprises. I'm back to the chairman that is seated there. Any other questions from because we don't have any more from, another one.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. I think there were a number of comments that were raised by the last two speakers. Maybe the speakers could also comment on those issues. That one that was raised by Matema and the colleague from Ofishnet. Eletu, would you want to start the ball?
Thank you, Chikonde. I think I'm going to try to respond to the lady's question in terms of, like cultural barriers that prevent, I think it was pointed out also by Jamina, that prevent, women from, fishing or doing certain activities. I think a lot of that has to do with organizing. As I was preparing for this talk, I went through a process where I was looking at how the women organized themselves when South Africa was writing its small-scale fisheries policy. And had they not organized themselves, because their voices would not have been heard, right? And looking at sort of the definition of a small-scale fisher in the policy, it says it doesn't talk about just the person who goes out to sea. It talks about everybody who's in the value chain. Yes, it may be there, right? But in terms of implementation, that really hasn't been the case. But because it is a policy, women are able to actually hold government accountable. Really, but that process came about with women organizing themselves and making sure that their voices were heard. I think we've all stressed here as the presenters that women's voices are not heard in small-scale fisheries. I think that is how we can change barriers and stuff. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. Edith, Rudith, would you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I think Matema's was a comment. So I'd just like to respond to the question raised by Lovin regarding the access to finance. Actually, yes, it is a very big problem globally, but I want to give this example that sometimes there are efforts made in a way wanting to support the women access funding, but it adds on into pushing them out of the system even further. Just an example, I gave it even the other time in my country, in Tanzania, women able to access loans from the local government authorities without any collateral. But the conditions for them to access that loan is a challenge. And currently, they've moved now, kind of transforming in a belief that they are supporting, improving, but they're even pushing them further out because everything is supposed to be digital. And I don't even need to say further, but the problems that are associated with the digital technology, particularly for women in the small-scale fisheries sector. So women have seen that, and they are organizing to see how the government came up with that without engaging them. But again, I would like to go to yours about organizing. It's very important. So in all these challenges that we are seeing, organizing is a primary tool also for collective action, for them to be able to influence and to bring about transformation. And a good example is our fishnet. Our fishnet, since it was established in 2017, today is almost more than 5 years, and it has grown, registered, the headquarters are in Tanzania. The organization now, the network, has a strategic plan, and we are seeing institutions that are eager to support our fishnet. So it's because the women are now organized. If they were not organized, no one would have supported them. And even if they would have wanted, how would they support? You know, they are scattered all over. So I think it's important to continue supporting the women to organize where they are not yet organized, but also strengthening these organizations in the countries where they're already organized or they are already formed. Support the implementation of their strategies, support access to finance, access to other resources, access to technology, access to knowledge and skills, so that they are able to engage in a meaningful way, participate in policy processes, decision-making processes, and at the end of the day, we realize the dreams. Yesterday we were dreaming here. So we realize the dreams that we wish to see happening for women, but also for all the actors along the fisheries value chain, especially fishers and fish workers, women, men, and youth. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
I have a question. I have something to talk to. Hello? Can you listen?
Yes,
This
you can, yeah.
Yeah, this is Joseph. Yeah, but I've seen that from the presentations and also from various sources. We've seen that women are mostly engaged in post-harvest activities in the small-scale fisheries. But I think that what hinders maybe participation of women to to actually participate fully in the harvest sector of the fisheries, that is working also as a fishing crew, and also increasing the number of women that that are owning this fishing vessel. Because I think, but this is maybe hypothetical, I think that maybe if we increase the number of women in the harvest sector, then I think we'll not be talking much about this IUU fishing, and maybe because women are known to be better savers, will this be something that maybe we can think over and also suggest some of the tangible issues that we can address, so that even the policy makers in the room can know what can be done actually to enhance women participation in the harvest sector. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that input. Helen, would you wish to say something to that effect? I think at AU IBA level, you are doing a lot of interventions to support countries, organizations, and there are comments that have come in here with regards to financing. What is it that is happening at that level? Yeah, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chikonde, for those questions. Firstly, I would like to echo what Edith and Eluti has been stressing, the fact that organization is very important. And it's very key because it has brought all the women on board. The women that were operating in the informal sector, they are now jointly collaborating with the women that are operating in the formal sector. And those in the informal sector, you'll understand that many of them are not registered, they do not have bank accounts, and they are unable to access this funding that is already difficult even to access. Then through this, the national chapters of OutFishNet, really, I think now they have the opportunity and the voice to go to the funding institutions, to go to the governments and plea for their special or dedicated funding that can be made available for them with less stringent measures, since they are now a formal institution. And I've also received another question online from Cornelia. Yes, where she's asking whether there's a similar initiative to get sanitary conditions for women improved in lending and marketplaces, collaboration with OutFishNet, the squalid working conditions of women who then cannot meet hygiene standards have been mentioned several times during the Congress. Yes, within the AU-IBA, what we've been able to do is to, we are not able to train, let's say, all the women on the continent, but we've been able to train selected women from selected countries. But the national chapters, those are the ones that are able to reach out to more women in isolated villages. They are able to train them because we have some women that are doing excellent job. They've met the SPS requirements and the international standards requirements. They are able to bring them to their facilities and give them practical experiences of how to improve the fish handling, the quality assurance, and so forth. So that is happening at the national level. And my colleagues from OutFishNet, they can even give you more knowledge or information on that. But for us at the continental level, we've been able to highlight, to touch base on those issues. But for them at the national level, they've been able to even provide them with more detailed, hands-on, practical knowledge for more days than we're able to do so. So we are working hand in hand with the OutFishNet Continental as well as the OutFishNet national chapters to do so. Thank you.
And there's still other questions online, but before I read them, I can confirm that the OutFishNet Nigeria had on-hand training with fishermen at their communities to improve fish handling practices and teach them on sanitary and phytosanitary measures so that their products can be accepted at the international market. There's another question from Cornelia, another contribution about the general states suggests that there's some advancement of access to school education across Africa for girls in partial implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Do you see already any effect in the communities you work with? I think this question is to one of the panelists. Anyone involved in education of girls in partial implementation of sustainable development goals in the communities that we want to answer this out of the speakers? Ratena, are you? Yes.
Possibly, I think we could have another round because we have hands within the house. So that is the first question. Can we have the next question before the speakers respond to this set of questions? So I have Moniba, who already has the mic, to pose her comments, contributions to this conversation. Moniba.
Thank you very much, Chikonde. And hello, Malebo. It's good to see you. It's been a while. Um, uh, uh, Delegates, colleagues, friends, it took us a week of interviewing 17 women, and they told us their stories. And I want to tell you a bit about our process when we do that. We've developed over the last 3 years a deep relationship with the women, and there's a deep level of trust that we build. And we also got consent from them, signed consent in terms of how we use these stories, how we present these stories, and also even check, even if they've given us consent to use their stories, even check if they're still okay, if we can say certain things. I think it is very important for us as women to ask consent when presenting their stories. And I think that this is also a case, relates back to the case of the seismic surveys. The reason why Searcher went in, because they were arrogant enough not to ask consent to communities. I think that there are one thing, Eletu, that disturbed me about your presentation, and I think you put it in passing. And this is, I think I should write a rebuttal to this article that women engages in sex for fish, and this is African women and traders. And I urge all of us as women, as researchers, if we do not have the evidence, because when I went into that article and looked at the article's content and the methodology, it was only 7 women who confirmed that. And suddenly the whole of African women are brushed with the same brush that African women are selling their bodies for sex for fish. I think we need to also change the narratives. And when we do use stories, we need to ask consent of women to present their stories. And I also want you not to leave before you buy a book. This is my, my pitch. Before you buy a book, to support the women that shared their stories, and also, and if you want to share their stories, please ask consent. That is the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we can respond to those inputs. There was a question online with regards to education. Do we see a transformation in the way the girls are being educated in the areas that we are working, and also the input that Muniba has just brought about. Anyone to take it up?
Can I respond to the issue that Muniba just brought up? I think in all research work, there's the issue of ethics that must be followed. It's a standard. Before you interview people, you let them know you are recording them or you are taking their photographs. I think it's a standard in research work that we all must follow. Thank you.
Maybe Eleto, you wish to say something with regards to that?
Thank you for your comment, Professor, as well as for Luke. Yes, I think for just that one particular a story, I did it was something that I got off an article. But in terms of the women that the stories that I presented here, I had gotten consent from all of those women. I mentioned that Auntie Nadima, I met her yesterday. I asked her, may I please share your story? Same thing with Auntie Sarah. We're also working with Auntie Sarah to also sort of develop a video where we're talking about the women's struggles in terms of accessing small-scale fishing rights. The women of Angola, Vesques Monkey. So all of these people, they also sent me all the pictures that I shared to say, okay, put this is what was happening there. So it is probably that one line of stats where luckily I don't have any pictures of women that I shared here. Yeah, thank you very much. I take note of that. I'll do better next time.
Okay. Thank you very much for those inputs. Unless there is somebody who would want to respond to the education one, or maybe it's beyond our. Sorry? We can't hear you.
Thank you. I just wanted to share my experience in my country, Uganda. I'm the chairperson for the Uganda National Women Fish Organization, a member of our FishNet. We requested for capacity building in terms of training women on fish hygiene, processing, and value addition. And we looked around for funding. We are lucky to get funds from GIZ, and we have been supported to train women and youth from 94 landing sites along the Lake Victoria region. From my experience with that training, we have discovered that it is very transformational because it is part of the enterprise development plan, that we had a strategic plan from our FishNet funded by Oak Foundation, who were able to develop a strategic plan for the continent. And we scaled it down to countries, and Uganda was one of the first countries to launch a strategic plan. So from our strategic plan, it was an action from the women themselves that they want to have this hands-on capacity building training on improving their products, branding them, packaging them, and making them market ready for export or for the country market. So it has improved the way we have been doing business, and we have just finished the training, but I can test to you or testify that the women, technology, we have even got equipment from FAO. So it is really something that I wish all countries can be able to receive. They should be able to be supported so that they can improve on the way they are doing their fish, the way they are packaging it, and the way they should receive equipment like weighing scales, ice boxes. So the girls are at least now admiring the mother's job, because before they think fish business is smelling, is dirty, is working hard. But we are changing the face of small-scale fisheries. We want it to be looked at as a job or as something that can bring money into the family. That is what I can share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything that has come up online?
So,
Oluke?
nothing yet, but I'm wondering why our men in the room are not speaking on this issue. We want them to say something too, because gender equality, equity helps in building different opinions that can bring about change. Diversity of opinion, we want to hear from you, because equity, gender equity has to do with both men and women. And we've had all the women speak today. Can the men speak so that we have diversity of opinion and ideas that we ultimately help us in bringing about innovation and changes that will help the lives of both men and women? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's the comment, an observation made that the men in-house, attending in person haven't commented. I would just say that maybe possibly it was the arrangement of the session itself. It had to flag out women to talk. Maybe next time we'll have to do better to bring men on board to share the experiences. I think we have men working with the women interventions, and maybe they could also share their experiences. Nonetheless, if there are comments, yes, I can see a hand over there. Before you come in, can you allow the man, because I think it's demand driven, and then you you come in after him. Yeah.
I am a man. My name is Winfried. Unfortunately, it is a feminine name. So what I wanted to say is that regarding the statements of, say, women selling their bodies, I think such statements we could put them, or rather you could put them as a sympathy when you require something, particularly when funding business comes, you know, you put such, it's a sympathetic language, but otherwise it's not true, because otherwise such research should also be done to see whether men do not also sell their bodies. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can have the mic. It's something that we can debate on. Yes, you have the mic.
Thank you. I'm not talking about male privilege now, so let the women speak. Yeah, I just want to talk about doing research in communities and about the research fatigue that was referred to earlier this week, and why is it so difficult sometimes to get into communities to do research. And it takes a lot of time to build up a long-term relationship with people and to build up that trust relationship where people can open up and we can get the real stories. And one of the things that is mentioned by many people in the communities that we do research in is a mention of the fly-by-night researchers. It is very dangerous to know a person for one day and do a presentation as if you have been working in that community. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Allow me, Ratana, to also say something as a pop-up chair. I had to pop up to chair in person as somebody participating in person because I equally have interest in the area. But just to comment on a few things that were raised, issues of rights, we are aware that they are indivisible. And when we're talking about women's rights, we really need to promote them, even within the small-scale fisheries. And coming to the issue of gender transformative approaches, I think, yes, we need to, as we are thinking solutions, thinking small scale, we need to think innovative behavior change interventions to transform the social cultural norms, because it's a process. While we want to really fight and move forward, we also need to move along with the men. those that feel they own the fishery, the small-scale fisheries. Why do they have that perception? We need to understand the social norms and then work along with them so that they can be transformed and then be in a position to be convinced that women equally own the small scale. And lastly, coming to the presentation from Eletu, I think the diagram that she presented, that a research was done in Malawi. That's part of my PhD. I really did that, and then I came up with a lot of issues as outcomes or as a result of women participating in the small-scale fisheries value chains. So we really need to look at the intersectionalities within the value chain. When you talked about the women buying from the langanyas. Who are these langanyas? Are they men? Are they women? And what type of fish do they participate in? So there are a lot of dynamics that we really have to understand as we are unpacking these issues to do with the gender. So at this point in time, let me hand back to Foluke and Joseph to wind it up, and then we give it back to Ratana. Foluke, Joseph, you have the floor to wind up.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all the speakers and the participants who have raised one issue or the other. It's been a very engaging section, and I thank you all for being here. And in rounding up, I want to say that gender equity must correct gender biases so that the economic outcomes will improve everyone. Not just the women, even the men, but we have to upscale for the women so that they can get up to the level the men are. We need to take into consideration the circumstances of men and women, and that these circumstances are different. So consideration must be given in allocating resources and opportunities to women so that there will be equal outcomes to both of them. There are little stereotypes and biases that are not spoken, but they're there when things are being done in the small-scale fisheries that affect women, not only women, even the youth, even the disadvantaged, the people in the community. And so we all need to be sensitive about this so that we don't fall into the same trap that we keep women down. And we also need to leverage on the opportunities and the achievements that have been rolled out by the different speakers of what has been achieved, how women have been empowered, especially through OfficeNet. And we are grateful to AU-IBA for sponsoring and ensuring that OfficeNet is making positive impact at the national level. And on this note, I want to say a big thank you for everybody. And I hope that the things we have learned about access to rights, fishing rights, about capacity building, about empowerment of women, about doing things to make sure that they have finance to work with and that they are not relegated to the background, and that there are no stereotype notes about where they should belong, that they can only be at particular value chains and not at the others that happen in some countries, that somehow this will be changed and women can have liberty and can be able to operate just like the men in small-scale fisheries. I will hand over to Joseph now for his closing remarks, and I thank you all for having been with us for the past 2 hours. Thank you all. Joseph? Joseph?
I didn't see Joseph online anymore. He
Probably we
was
lost him because of connectivity.
Yeah, I think it's raining in Malawi, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Foluke, Joseph, and especially Chikondi for being a pop-up chair. And of course, all our speakers and the discussants.